The vision is for years ahead. It's a long-term vision of connecting to this ecosystem, creating a footprint here, and continuing to grow. Really to benefit, the idea is really a win-win-win. It's supposed to benefit the people, it's supposed to benefit the Israeli stakeholders, and it really is supposed to benefit, of course, the corporation that I work for.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with CleanTech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Outpost Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello and welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Let's talk about innovation. Meet Leor Ben-Yakov, Chief Innovation Officer, Head of Partnerships and Ventures, Mitsubishi Corporation. Mitsubishi's history is dating back to the 19th century. MC is one of the largest Japanese general trading companies, active in virtually every industry. Leor joined MC's new outpost to help effectively connect the vast footprint and resources of a global and traditional corporation with the innovative ecosystem that has developed in Israel. He is Israel's advocate within the group, identifying synergetic opportunities for collaboration or investment in verticals such as AgriFoodTech, Industry 4.0, Mobility, CleanTech, and others. Leor Ben-Yakov, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
I'm really excited. I really enjoy this format. I've watched several of the episodes. I love the simplicity. It's interesting. So I hope I'll do a good job.
Thank you very much. Already starting with the smile. I love it. One thing that caught me by big surprise, Mitsubishi Corporation is not only Mitsubishi cars. I know I had this whole episode planned talking about innovation in cars, and here you tell me that it's actually much bigger, and that cars is just a portion of the big picture.
Yes, that's true. So, and it's complicated. I myself am still learning. It's actually a lot of fun. I'm studying history and the business. So I work for. I'm Leor Ben-Yakov. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and Head of Partnerships and Ventures, and effectively the Deputy GM of Mitsubishi Corporation, not Mitsubishi Motors, in the Israel office. We're based in Tel Aviv, and I guess more about what I do a little bit later. And it's true, Mitsubishi Corp is what you would call a general trading company, one of the Japanese trading companies, Sogo Sosha in Japanese. The larger one, they're not many of them, but they do cover a lot of the Japanese economy. So I learned these are large conglomerates that have been in existence since the 19th century, when Japan was going through its first westernization process in the Meiji era, went through evolution after the World War, and they still exist today. So there are a few other names, and Mitsubishi Corp is one of the largest ones. And indeed, as you alluded, Mitsubishi Motors is one of our 1,200 daughter companies. And it's part of one of the 10 business platforms, which one of them is really the automotive sector.
I'm still shocked by the 1,200. I've done quite a few episodes. I don't remember many times that I was in such a big shock in the middle of the episode. Leo, your history, stemming a lot from agritech as well, and in innovation and management, holding key, vice president roles amongst some really interesting companies, being a manager within Cargill, but then also going to CropX and Accenture, and who is Leo? Wow, how do you end up as being deputy GM and chief innovation in the Tel Aviv branch of a company that has 1,200 daughter companies?
Well, that's a good question. I need to ask my wife how that happened. So it's an interesting story, I guess. I'm married. I've got three kids. Grew up in Haifa, Israel. Actually, to a multinational family. We spoke English at home, and I guess for about almost a decade and a half now, is kind of the switch to what I call the business side. So I started out as a Technion graduate, did information system work for a while, but then sort of made the switch when I went to do my MBA at the University of Chicago. The Booth School of Business was a very interesting time when I did it. The subprime crisis hit immediately after we moved. So, the joke I sometimes tell my friends is that I was Lehman Brothers' last mistake because I interned there over the summer.
In 2008.
Which was interesting.
Okay.
So that was an interesting time. But following my MBA, I joined the strategy and business development team of Cargill, which is a huge agribusiness, the largest privately owned corporation in the United States. And that unit was sort of it's like an internal McKinsey for a while. And another part of the time there was with their internal accelerator. So it opened a broad picture for, first of all, how these things are done in terms of the function. So you're analyzing the innovation, you're talking to startups, you're doing internal innovation, doing strategy work and corporate development work. Broadened my mind. It was a great school, additional school. I learned what a real winter was like when I studied in Chicago, and then when we moved to Minnesota, where headquarters of Cargill are. My wife and we learned that it could be worse. But the city itself was amazing. You get a broad picture of many of the business units, food ingredients, ag, trading, management. You're working with these senior leaders and helping them think about the special corporate issues that arise.
It sounds like you had an abundance of experiences that were really, meaningful and impactful that you take with you until now. And we're looking at, years ago. What was there an experience that you reflect back on it and that you felt took you from A to B, on a personal growth level?
Well, yeah, I guess several. If I move forward, I think the experience within an actual startup in CropX, so this is a few years ahead. I was talking about Cargill. At some point, we returned to Israel, and I was VP of Business Development for one of the Coca-Cola Israel companies for Prigat. And I was touching upon innovation and startups from the side of the large corporations, whether they be global by global standards or large by Israeli standards. And it started to tickle. Let's say, I think it makes sense to feel what it's like from the inside. And I think that's actually very good advice for anyone doing innovation or investment. At least my opinion was you have to feel what a startup is from inside. In parallel, I was also thinking about at the time about agtech and food tech in a very bullish manner. I think this is about 5 years ago. I think I've been proven right with the various very interesting valuations we're seeing in the industry right now. And I joined CropX, which was an amazing precision agriculture startup as the VP of Biz Dev. And so to answer your question about the experience that really developed, so of course, great experiences with Cargill, then returning to Israel. And in CropX, it gave me another perspective. This time from the side of the startup, I had to work with these large corporates and gain their attention because together with myself, maybe 100 other startups are trying to talk to them and speak to investors and work with the board and work with our management and the amazing CEO with the company and learn how to deal with that intensity. And during that time, we raised a Series B round. And during that time, I guess almost single-handedly opened a new market, which was, dollar-wise, maybe not as huge as what the numbers I would have seen at Cargill, but very important for the development and for funding and creating value within the startup. And that gave me a very interesting perspective. So corporate and startup. And that kind of led into what I'm doing today.
So just before we get into today's role, because I think it's going to be fascinating on its own. if we're going back to where you were at CropX and you're opening this new market and you're watching through this financing of the Series B round, and then you're reflecting back on your position in this global company, right? A Coca-Cola company, and you're working in the ecosystem from the corporate and global level. What do you realize, in looking back in retrospective, that you were missing out on? Because you're mentioning that, you think that, people who are looking to work in innovation, large corporates, they can benefit a lot from working in a startup. What did you benefit, in retrospect?
Well, when I joined the startup with the background of the corporate, it kind of gave me a good idea of what the corporates were thinking and what their agenda is, whether it's a personal agenda of the individuals you're working with or the agenda of their division. Let's not be naive. It's not always the same agenda. Sometimes their interests and people and opinions and a little bit of politics, and you learn and for sometimes young people within the startup who haven't had the experience with maybe a global corporate that had worked with a startup from the other side, they don't really understand what's going on. Why is it taking so long? And why are they asking these questions again and again, repetitive? Are they disrespecting us? Are they trying to just push us off? And you have to be resilient in that situation. Not too pushy, but yet also you have to always have your finger on the pulse, they say in Hebrew, to get back and to follow up and to this is true for all startups. Be ready to hear no and maybe and workarounds, but you really understand what's going on. And when I began working as part of CropX, bringing in an investor who happened to be a company similar to Mitsubishi, one of our competitors, another Japanese Sogo Sosha general trading company. That was a difficult experience. It was almost sometimes I felt like, oh my God, what's going on? What are they? Again, they're asking this. They asked these questions 2 weeks ago and 2 months ago. What's going on? In retrospect, today, when I'm part of a Japanese company in a large corporate, I knew what was going on. And by the way, there was a happy ending there. They asked many questions. It was very difficult and sometimes tedious, but they invested, which was a very important strategic investment. So, not saying that that's always the case when you speak to a company such as ours and pitching your startup, but it will happen.
Incredible.
I hope that answers the question.
100%. Fast forward to today, December of 2021, Mitsubishi Corporation's innovation, working with the ecosystem here. What is it all about for you?
Perfect. So in some ways, it feels like I'm opening a small startup within a large corporate here in Israel, together with my amazing GM, who is a Japanese national who lives now in Israel. We are really the advocates for the Israeli ecosystem within this very broad world, let's call it, of Mitsubishi Corp, and its reach across not only Japan and not only Asia, but globally. What we're trying to do is identify, at this point, we are what you would call a liaison office, or we're trying to identify opportunities, whether it would be with funds, but mostly with startups and maybe other stakeholders in several verticals, whether it's AgriFoodTech, mobility, Industry 4.0, CleanTech, areas that could be synergetic for our group. The group covers virtually every type of industry. And the idea is to be able to connect them to the right business unit or to the right daughter company and facilitate beyond just matchmaking there, try to facilitate something that will turn into collaboration. And collaboration can be anything, a pilot, something commercial, hopefully also investment, lead to investment. And, keeping in mind our internal processes, things take time, but the vision is for years ahead. It's a long-term vision of connecting to this ecosystem, creating a footprint here and continuing to grow. really to benefit. It's really the idea is really a win-win-win. It's supposed to benefit the people. It's supposed to benefit the Israeli stakeholders, and it really is supposed to benefit, of course, the corporation that I work for.
Now, when you're looking at the Israeli ecosystem, and there's a lot of innovation going on, a lot of startups. How are these relationships forming right now? Sort of what is the process that you go through in forming these relationships with the Israeli ecosystem, both on the inbound and the outbound level?
So right now we're a very small operation, and little did I know, but when I joined, it was only a few weeks before COVID started. So things have changed a little bit in terms of speed and your ability to work. But the strategy is really to create a funnel. So my day-to-day is really speaking, the way we're speaking now, with as many companies as I can, analyze which ones, myself and the GM, analyze which ones might be relevant together. Analyze which ones might be, first of all, interesting in general, and then interesting for whichever business within our group, and then try to facilitate those by making the right introductions and connections, and providing the right follow-up, and being the person on the ground for other decision makers within the group.
But you're talking about a group that has 1,200 daughter companies.
That's right. We're not going to speak with all 1,200. The group is organized into kind of 12 divisions by industry. So I'm not going to remember them all. So of course there's the auto and mobility, because you mentioned that, but there is mining, chemicals, energy, infrastructure, agri-food, of course, which is kind of my baby, and a few others. And within the verticals we're looking at, the strategy is, in order to get some sort of a multiplier effect, is also to work with stakeholders that can have an aggregate effect. So an example would be, and this is public, a relationship we've created with the agri-food investment arm or accelerator called Trendlines. You may have heard of them, very highly reputable. So together with them, I can cover that vertical, even though we're only a small number of people. And we're looking to do similar things maybe with other outfits that cover other verticals, in I4, mobility, etc. And of course, directly to speak with startups. And when we find the ones that meet the criteria of, one, interesting, two, someone caught the bait is not the word, but someone wants to champion it internally, then we'll push forward as much as we can. But our vision going forward is to evolve and cut these processes short, and to some of the other Japanese companies have evolved into a CVC, a corporate VC. We want to evolve that way as well. Whether the first step will be some sort of a hybrid model, which can be very interesting, and maybe further on in the future, an actual CVC.
What is your role as you see it in the Israeli ecosystem today? Things are evolving quickly. There's, Israel is a powerhouse in every way possible. And people like you, as far as I see it, they're catalysts in different ways, shapes, and forms. What is your role in the Israeli ecosystem today?
I really agree with the way you defined it. Catalyst is a great way to put it. When I describe to my friends what my role is, I say that it's a hybrid of VC, business development, scouting, and a little bit of the Israel Export Institute, in Hebrew, Machon HaYetzu, because we're here to represent and really work for the local stakeholders. It's literally our job to help them for free. To try and get into this very large, traditional, complicated organization, which has a very long-term view. So maybe it's a disadvantage, this complexity, but there are huge advantages for any stakeholder trying to work with us, just by virtue of connecting with the resources and the name and the connections that such an organization can have. Just imagine a startup working to raise funds in one of the rounds, and the startup can publish, "Hey, we're doing a pilot with Mitsubishi Corp." Wow, that's a big thing. it might not be the biggest headline in CTech, but it's a very big thing, and these are some of the things we're looking for.
Well,
and of course, when it leads to investment.
Yeah, sometimes the more strategic things in around don't often make it to the headlines. They're the deeper things that require a little bit more introspection to really dig deep into, and so I can definitely understand that. And I just want to say, Leo, that I think it's so cool, to be in a position when you're at. There's some jealousy in my tone of voice here, because you really, you're sitting in this intersection of, on one hand, this phenomenal innovation hub, this the miracle of the state of Israel. At the same time, you're representing such an incredible company, Mitsubishi Corporation, with really touching all aspects of our lives, dealing with some of the most cool products in the world, and you get to bridge the gap between the two and play a really pivotal role. And I really, so first of all, thank you for your part of this ecosystem, and really also thank you for these 20 minutes. I really enjoyed them, and I learned a lot, and I get a lot of inspiration for myself. So really, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was really fun, and I really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.